To me, it has a significance because it's the moment in time really where a six-film series sort of finally comes into focus, because the first two Hobbit movies are the first two acts virtually of an 8-hour story. So this is the climax of the 8-hour story, but it also is the film that is a missing piece to carry on into Fellowship of the Ring and on to 2 Towers Return of the King. So to me, it's like until this movie actually existed, and there was these parts that were sort of out there, floating out there, and now we can be together. Because we're only 4 or 5 years away from a generation arriving that will forget, or has no, 4 or 5 year olds now who are too young to see this movie because it's too scary. When they're 8 or 9, only a very short time away, they'll have no memory or knowledge of how these films were released, and when they come out, all they'll have is a 6-part box set, and they'll hopefully start at the beginning, and if they like it, they'll go through to the end. So,
what is the beginning for you? What order would you want them to see them in?
Well, the order that it should be in. It starts with The Unexpected Journey, finishes at Return of the King. That's the way that, since we started The Hobbit, that's the way that we've always been shaping the films. Yeah.
Have you had a day yet when you have woken up and the first thought hasn't been the orc's teeth aren't right, or the whatever it is, some
It's a very good question. Probably not. No. I mean, it's whether or not it's the first thought or not. It's like we haven't had a day where we haven't woken up and there's been a deadline coming. I mean, even if you go on vacation and you say, hey, you finished the first Hobbit movie or something, you can have 3 weeks off over Christmas. It's like, but we've got to start work on the next one. So we've got to come back on January the 6th. It's always been that sort of looming sort of thing that now. Get to wake up and done, finished, nothing to do. I mean, we deliberately haven't taken on any other work because Fran and I just so badly wanted for once in our lives, literally probably in our professional lives for 30 odd years, I wanted to not have anything to do. Now that doesn't mean that 6 weeks into our holiday we'll be so bloody bored we'll start another project, but that would be fine, but at least we'll do it for the right reasons. I literally just, you can't believe how much we just don't want anything to do.
I'm going to remind you of that in 6 weeks.
We'll see what happens. May still want another few weeks of nothing to do. Who knows?
Yeah, that'll be nice.
Well, from a writer's perspective, the so much of the Hobbit trilogy has been expanded and extrapolated, and retconned is the wrong word, but you found ways to bring in elements of Lord of the Rings to stitch it all together. And it's fascinated me in each new film how much of that becomes the key narrative of a given hour will be, so much of it is new material or imagined material, and I'm dying to know how you guys figured out the formula, because that's the thing that fascinates me about this trilogy, is that so much of it is literally imagined based on what you already know about Tolkien. You guys have been steeped in it for 15, 16 years now. So what brought you to this calculus? How did you figure it out?
Experience, and that's why it was really good to approach these films with having made The Lord of the Rings first. I think it was a lucky accident that we did actually do that, because I think...
well, it was an accident. Yes, doing them the wrong way round.
Doing them the wrong way round.
You can't claim it was a grand plan. It was purely circumstance.
But it did mean we knew who Gandalf was and who Legolas was, and it allowed us to... Because, he didn't stop writing The Hobbit. He kept writing The Hobbit. There's a lot of material in the extended cut. His extended cut, his version of the extended cut.
But also Lord of the Rings, in the actual Lord of the Rings, he's retrospectively filling in a lot of Hobbit gaps as well. He's sort of
he never says
some of that into
what happened in Dol Guldur. But you go into the appendices, or you go back into the Lord of the Rings, and you know that there were ring wraiths in there. There was a necromancer in there. You know that there was Sauron. You know so much more.
I mean, I guess the thing is that we were never ever adapting. I don't think people really realise this, and and obviously we probably disappointed a lot of people. We were never ever adapting the Hobbit of the 1937. Well, when it was published in 1937, that was never the Hobbit that we were adapting. We were adapting that Hobbit plus the material that he retrospectively put into it, and from Lord of the Rings, plus the appendices of the Return of the King. We were adapting the sort of the Hobbit as it existed in the 50s, in the mid 50s, once Tolkien had sort of not all within the pages of one book, but he'd fleshed it out more.
But we did, it's interesting. Thranduil's an interesting character in terms of what we had to make up, and this is what's really cool about Pete's process, is that you get to work with the actor to figure out some of that backstory. And we did that with Thranduil because there's not a huge amount in there. But, the whole story narrative of him being an isolationist, which you really liked and embraced because it gave him that journey. There's layered in there, and there's possibly a little bit more in the extended cut if you do it, is the story of why he's like that.
We'll be doing it, don't we?
Why he's like that. And it was neat because we got to work with Lee on that backstory.
It was such a purely creative process. I mean, it was to take the little clues that we were given in The Hobbit and mine them for, what the essence of that character was. This elven king who had fought in the great battles, had fought dragons, but now was refusing to fight. Now is avoiding this epic battle between good and evil.
And was also a father.
And he was also a father.
Hence the dynamic with the mom, which is a very interesting line you guys incorporated. I'm just wondering if you could talk about where that line sort of what it's
gems. It started with the gems.
And that'll be a little bit fleshed out, a little bit more next in the cut too.
But Legolas's mother is never mentioned. But we liked that idea that that he's not. It's a bit more than I want my gems back. We always had this conceit, and in the end, this never gets told necessarily, but it informs the actor, and that's so when you deliver that line, your mother loved you, it has a power that I thought was part of the backstory, that she died and the only thing remaining of her that he has is these gems.
But he's such a cold character. He is such a severe character, and it rings true to me that severity comes from a heartbreak. The elves feel things in a very deep way, in a deeper way. They're not human. They're not very, very far from human. Those emotions, that love is profound.
I also think too that Thranduil's got the hardest decision of everybody in terms of fighting. Fighting for Thranduil is committing his troops. And yet, unlike the other characters who are mortal, who, if they don't die in this battle, they will die of old age at some point. Thranduil is, the elves, they are immortal, but however, if they get an orc sword through them, then they're going to die just like anyone else. So for someone who is basically committing the lives of elves who would otherwise live forevermore and committing them to possibly a short, violent death, it must be a decision that's a little bit more difficult than anyone else has.
Does this gentleman have a split personality because he can do special effects epic and still be so intimate with his actors to get the performance he got out of you? What's with this guy?
This guy. Honestly, one of the most inspiring people I've ever worked with. Because there's all these disparate actors kind of working on, and I watched the movie back last week, and we're all telling the same big story. And that's coming from conversations that we've had in your kitchen, Philippa. And kind of coming onto a green screen where we don't know what this battle really is going to look like. But absolutely,
I didn't know what it was going to look like either. Glad you didn't ask me too many questions.
I remember saying the army's going to be big, right?
Yeah.
And it's going to be big. And I said, but it's going to be really big. And you're like, it's going to be really big. But then I watched the movie, and the army is 10 times bigger than I ever conceived it would be.
When I'm on set shooting, a lot of the battle stuff, because it's CGI, I don't actually have to worry about it. A lot of that battle was all created in the last 4 or 5 months, 6 months, which is good. Which is great because it's like it's something you don't have to actually think about. If you had to think about that whole big battle and exactly what was going to happen while I was trying to shoot the rest of the movie, it just makes everything twice as hard. So I'm able to just it's going to be big, and let's not discuss it anymore. Concentrate on what we're actually shooting today, which is not the battle. So it's like
But this is such an important part of what I took away from the process we had is that we had such a good time making the movie. It was such an enjoyable experience for all of us. It was so creative. It was so kind of these characters are, they're fun to play.
I mean, you see, my feeling of with directing now, and no one's ever told me how to direct, and I've never been to acting school or never read books about it, and I've stumbled my way through it and not done a good job in some cases, but I've sort of what I've come to do now with directing, and I hope you're going to agree with me, is that I sort of try not to direct the actors at all. I mean, I don't necessarily come and say, listen, that's not the way you should deliver this line. You should do this. You should emphasise that. Where you should be. I don't try to minutely direct the actors moment by moment. What I love doing. And you guys respond so well to it is we talk about what the story is requiring in the scene. So in other words, I direct from the audience's point of view. So really, I don't say, this is how you should deliver this line. I say, this line of yours here, the audience should feel that you're not quite telling the truth. I want the average audience member to hear it and to just be wondering whether or not that's the truth or not. So I don't tell you how to deliver a line to do that. I just that's what the audience needs. And if you've got fantastic actors like Lee, they immediately get it. They immediately get it, and they'll deliver you 3 different ways in which you cannot quite tell the truth. So I always try to direct from the point of view of let's talk about the story, let's talk about what's happened up to this point, because every scene, I believe generally, and obviously there's exceptions, but every scene should have a development internally. So in other words, the scene shouldn't really exist if everything, all the dynamics, story and characters at the beginning are identical to the end of the scene. I mean, what's the point of actually that scene even existing? Something in there, whether it's one character or several or circumstances, something should be slowly changing so you get out of that scene onto the next with something has fundamentally shifted in our storytelling. And so it's good to explain that because the cast sometimes don't understand that, because sometimes it's involving scenes earlier that we haven't even shot yet. And I've got them in my head and not necessarily on the page of the script. And so I have to try to explain that. And then once we all know that the story that the scene is going to provide to the audience, that's the language of directing actors, I believe. So.
But we're also just kind of fans of the story, fans of the movie. You're such a fan of, that it's like what becomes the process on set is I'm going to do something that Pete likes. Do you know what I mean? And I want to make Pete laugh. Because you're on the mic, so we can hear the response, which is, it's like I just want to. Do something that he thinks is cool.
Yeah, but so long as you guys know the story, you surprise me, absolutely. That's the great thing, is I'm not telling you what to do, telling you what the audience needs to do, and then you guys can just come up with the most imaginative ways of doing it. It's fantastic, yeah.
And speaking of conversations in our kitchen, I remember you asked me really early on about, what's Pete's process, and that's the same thing I've said to a lot of actors who've asked me that, and is if you do it, Pete will see it and he will find it. And what's really interesting about that is that your camera Pete is very collaborative. He's open to, like the look that you give to Bard in this scene with Gandalf, just that look,
which I love that moment.
Sees it, and you've got to trust that your director, because Pete is always. It's when he reads a page, he's not reading it to go, no, this is wrong. He's reading it to go, yes, and I think that's what's really good, is that you embrace other people.
I mean, if you look at the behind the scenes stuff, you'll see me in a big tent. With a 42-inch plasma is what I see. As the cameras are rolling, that's the image. And obviously, with the digital cameras, you get a nice sharp image. It's like you're getting. And even though I'm sitting there and I've got this bloody big screen on about 3 foot in front, I always end up, once they roll, I always end up leaning right forward. And that's not because I'm short-sighted, but it's because I actually want to be in the cinema. I sort of don't want to be in that tent on set. I want to, for that moment, and I mentally try to lean forward, look at this thing, and think, okay, I'm flash forward 18 months. I'm in the theatre. This is what I'm watching. This is what everyone's seeing. Is this sort of, as the audience again? I mean, we have that discussion, but then I try to put myself in the audience's shoes as we're rolling camera, because it's the only perspective that counts. It doesn't matter what I think. It's what the audience gets from the film is the only thing that actually matters at the end of the day.
I'd like to ask about the art direction. It's just stunning, and I know it's sort of a secondary thing, but it says so much. For instance, your character comes in on this isolation booth, really. The antlers, it's his protection and it's his distance. But for every character and every scene, everything, you have to have a look that says something about it, that is symbolic, that is mythical.
Well, not so much with the characters, although obviously the characters. We've always approached Tolkien, and this is true of the Lord of the Rings, obviously, the Hobbit. We've always approached him, and it's much more fun to approach him as history, not fantasy. Not because the fantasy's to be embarrassed about it, because it's not. I mean, I love it, but I always think that fantasy movies traditionally have always been a bit condescending, and they've always been, let's put people in bright, colourful costumes. It's a little bit silly because it's not real. It's not real, is what a lot of and you could sort of see that in some of the fantasy movies of the past. It's like, it gives you a free pass. If it's not real, you can kind of be... And I just think that's not the approach that I like about fantasy, and obviously Tolkien as well, the way. So our design has always been influenced by the real world. So we look at the the Riders of Rohan, Theoden's people, and they're obviously based on the Norse people more than anything. And so you start to look at the history books and the National Geographics of what the iconography is there, and start to pull bits from it. The elves, way back in Fellowship, the elves felt like a very Art Nouveau, that sort of, that French, when Paris, the underground things with all those amazing signs and the way, and that felt very Elven to us, and so that was a clue into the elves. And so then you obviously try to be original. You're not going to copy it exactly, but it just means that you're just tying into our world slightly with each of these races and cultures, and it gives everyone on the same page too, because if you just make up a sheet of great Art Nouveau existing artwork, and you give that to the wardrobe department, the makeup department, the hair department, the set building, everyone's then making the same, they're working on the same film. They understand the influences, because the danger with fantasy is that it can become a bit too scattered, when you're dealing with 300 or 400 artists on the crew in capacities who have to design different bits and pieces.
But it's style too. You can't buy style. You can't fake style.
Well, that's why we hired you to be
No,
the king.
no, I had nothing to do with that.
Who are the actors with style, is what we said. I mean, elves are hard to cast. Elves are the hardest to cast, because elves are a perfection that the majority of us, I don't see a lot of elves on this table, apart from one. They have to be a little otherworldly, the elves, and they're really pain in the ass to cast. It's tricky. It's tricky, but we've been lucky.
Was Lee being younger than his son? But that's the other great thing about it.
Yes, well, yes, but it's weirdly the way that you guys pulled it off. You don't feel like you're actually younger than all. It doesn't feel like
no,
that.
you don't. You feel centuries older.
Thousands. Thousands.
Yeah, but you don't age. I mean, the aging of an elf isn't the normal.
So, hey, what's next? I mean, the epic Guardians and the epic Hobbit. Are you going to do like a two-hander movie in an alley somewhere?
I don't know. I've loved this experience of playing characters that are so far from myself. I've really, really, really enjoyed that, and kind of found a way of working that I have a good time with, I understand, and just really, enjoy taking it as far away from myself as possible.
So you left your number with Peter just in case he does come.
Oh, anytime.
Absolutely. Obviously we've been doing these films for a long time, but now I'm looking into the future, which I'm not because I'm having a holiday. But should I look into the future? I don't know what movies I'm going to make, but I would love to. I mean, we have just got such a great collection of wonderful actors who are friends now of all different types, and so I would be a happy man if I could just make movies for the rest of my life using the cast that we've used to date, because it's fantastic. I mean, I love it when directors have relationships with the same actors that you see, and they work on film after film. I think that's a fantastic thing, because it's such a creative. You get such a creative partnership going. So, yeah. Don't have a Tintin. Oh, look, I'm having a holiday. You are pouring cold water on everything at the moment. Possibly I do, possibly I don't, but not until we've had a little bit at some point soon.
Tolkien toyed around with the books for a decade or more after he wrote them.
Yes.
Do you envision a time after your vacation that you go back and play around either with the technology that you used in the older films, play around with the story, do anything more to these films, or are they documented?
Well, the only thing we'll be doing is in the new year, if we do have to cut the extended cut, which so we've sort of, in a way, but the extended cut's interesting because it's not a dumping ground for outtakes and a way to make more money, as a lot of people, I'm sure, think it is. It's, to me, I don't, because it's the studio that make the money. It's not me. So I just look on it as what I find interesting is it's essentially the same story for two different experiences of viewing. all this year we've been, we start with the entire, everything we shot sort of cut together, and now we sort of, from that, we start to shape the theatrical film, which is the one that we have to shape first, because it's the one that's going to be released now, and that's a cinema experience, so it's what you're focused on. And then with the DVD version, which is then, comes out in a few more months, the extended cut version, to me that's like, what's fascinating is that you've now got the same story. And if you put all the stuff in it for the theatrical, everyone would scream, it's too long. Well, sometimes they scream that. They scream that anyway. But anyway, it's but you couldn't really do it. But then you have a different experience where you're now at home, you're watching in bed, you're stopping halfway to have dinner, and your friends come around, you're getting drunk, you're whatever. It's just like it's a whole different way of viewing the movie, different energy, different way of viewing it, and the content doesn't have to be the same. It doesn't have to be the same. As we've seen, it's like people actually start to like the longer versions more, but only from the point of view of their sofa or their bed, not from a cinema seat. So it's a fascinating thing. I just think that there's not the need to have an identical version of the movie in the cinema as to the one at home. It clearly is sort of quite a fascinating experience to sort of to watch. You're allowed to do some different things. So. But to answer your question, no, I'm not a guy. I've got other things I want to make, other films I want to make. I think it would be a terrible, sad thing to spend the rest of my life going back over these films and trying to make them better. So I don't have any intention of doing that, no.